I let my stepfather think he was inheriting my mother's house, until he found out she left it all to me. My mother passed away 3 months ago, and I've been dealing with the aftermath ever since. She had been married to my stepfather for about 8 years, and honestly, I never really warmed up to the guy. There was something about him that always felt off, like he was putting on a performance whenever I was around. He would get overly friendly, asking about my work and my personal life in a way that felt intrusive rather than caring. When Mom got sick last year, he became even more attentive, but not in the way you'd expect from a loving husband. Instead of focusing on her comfort and well-being, he kept making comments about finances and what would happen after she was gone. He'd mention things like how expensive her medical treatments were and how they were draining their savings. The whole thing made me uncomfortable, but Mom seemed to appreciate his presence, so I kept my mouth shut. The house had been in our family for over 30 years. My parents bought it when I was just a kid, and it was where I grew up. After Dad died when I was in college, Mom stayed there alone for several years before she met my stepfather. The place held so many memories for me, and I always assumed it would stay in the family somehow. My stepfather moved in about 6 months after they got married, and he immediately started making changes to the place. He painted over the wallpaper in the kitchen that Mom had picked out years ago, replaced the old wooden fence in the backyard with some cheap vinyl thing, and even got rid of some of the furniture that had been there since I was a child. Every time I visited, something else was different. When I mentioned it to Mom, she just shrugged and said he was trying to make the place feel more like home for both of them. During her final weeks, my stepfather's behavior became increasingly strange. He would hover around whenever the lawyer came to visit, and I caught him going through Mom's papers several times. When I confronted him about it, he claimed he was just trying to organize everything to make things easier for her. He kept talking about how much work it was going to be to settle her affairs, and how he was prepared to handle everything. The reading of the will was scheduled for 2 weeks after the funeral. My stepfather seemed unusually confident leading up to it, making comments about how he needed to decide what to do with the house, and whether he wanted to stay there or sell it. He even mentioned that he might want to downsize to something smaller and use the money from the sale to travel. The casual way he talked about it made my blood boil, but I figured there wasn't much I could do about it. On the day of the reading, we sat in the lawyer's office with a few other family members. My stepfather had this smug look on his face, like he already knew what was coming. The lawyer started reading through the various bequests, and my stepfather nodded along as if he was mentally calculating his inheritance. When she got to the part about the house, his expression was one of complete anticipation. The lawyer cleared her throat and read the relevant section carefully. My mother had left the house entirely to me, along with most of her other assets. My stepfather would receive a small monetary gift and some personal items, but nothing close to what he had obviously been expecting. The color drained from his face as the reality of the situation sank in. He sat there in stunned silence for several minutes while the lawyer continued reading. After the meeting, my stepfather pulled me aside in the parking lot. His friendly demeanor had completely disappeared, replaced by something much more hostile. He demanded to know if I had somehow influenced my mother's decision, or if I had manipulated her while she was sick. I told him honestly that I had no idea what she had planned, and that we had never discussed her will in detail. He didn't believe me and accused me of being greedy and ungrateful. Over the next few days, he became increasingly aggressive in his communications with me. He sent long text messages explaining how much he had sacrificed for my mother, and how he deserved to be compensated for all the money he had spent on the house and her medical care. He claimed that he had put his own retirement plans on hold to take care of her, and that leaving him with so little was unfair and cruel. I decided to do some digging into his background, something I probably should have done years earlier. What I found was disturbing and explained a lot about his behavior. He had been married twice before, and both marriages had ended in messy divorces involving disputes over property and money. In one case, his ex-wife had accused him of hiding assets and manipulating financial records. There were also some civil court cases related to unpaid debts and business disputes. The more I learned about his history, the more I realized that my mother had probably figured out what kind of person he really was. She had always been sharp about people's motivations, and I suspected that she had seen through his act long before she got sick. The way she had structured her will suggested that she wanted to protect the family assets from someone she didn't trust completely. My stepfather's true nature became even more apparent when he started threatening legal action. He claimed that he was going to contest the will and that he had grounds to challenge my mother's mental state when she made her final decisions. He hired a lawyer and started gathering what he thought was evidence of undue influence on my part. The whole situation became incredibly stressful and emotionally draining. The legal proceedings dragged on for months, with my stepfather's lawyer trying to find any angle they could use to invalidate the will. They demanded medical records, interviewed my mother's doctors, and even tried to get testimony from neighbors about my relationship with her. Throughout this process, my stepfather's behavior became increasingly erratic and desperate. He would show up at my workplace uninvited, call me at all hours of the night, and even tried to turn other family members against me. During one particularly heated phone call, he revealed something that completely changed my understanding of the situation. In his anger, he admitted that he had been planning to sell the house immediately after my mother's death and use the money to pay off significant debts that he had accumulated over the years. He had apparently been living beyond his means for quite some time and had been counting on my mother's assets to bail him out of his financial troubles. This revelation made me realize that my mother had been even more perceptive than I had given her credit for. She had somehow figured out that he was using her and had taken steps to protect not just the house, but also her other assets from being squandered on his poor financial decisions. The will wasn't just about leaving me the family home. It was about preventing him from destroying something that had real meaning and value. The court case eventually fell apart when my stepfather's lawyer realized they had no legitimate grounds for contesting the will. My mother had been examined by multiple doctors in the months before her death, and all of them had confirmed that she was mentally competent and fully aware of her decisions. The will had been properly executed with witnesses, and there was no evidence of any undue influence or coercion on my part. After the legal challenge failed, my stepfather's behavior took another disturbing turn. He started spreading rumors about me in the community, telling anyone who would listen that I had somehow cheated him out of his rightful inheritance. He contacted my mother's friends and former colleagues with wild stories about how I had manipulated her in her final days. Most people saw through his lies, but the whole situation was embarrassing and hurtful. The final straw came when I discovered that he had been secretly removing items from the house during the months after my mother's death. He had a key and had been letting himself in when he thought I wouldn't be around. Some of my mother's jewelry was missing, along with several valuable pieces of artwork and some family heirlooms that should have been part of the estate. When I confronted him about this, he denied everything and claimed that my mother had given him permission to take those items. I had the locks changed immediately and installed a security system to prevent any further intrusions. I also reported the theft to the police, though they said it would be difficult to prove since he had been living in the house and could claim that he had permission to take those items. The whole experience left me feeling violated and angry, not just about the stolen property, but about how he had disrespected my mother's memory and wishes. Looking back on the entire ordeal, I'm amazed at how well my mother had read the situation and planned accordingly. She had managed to protect the family assets while still providing for her husband in a modest way. The house meant everything to our family's history and legacy, and she had ensured that it would remain where it belonged rather than being sold off to cover someone else's debts. Moving forward, I decided to honor my mother's memory by restoring the house to the way it had been before my stepfather made his changes. I repainted the kitchen with the original wallpaper pattern, replaced the cheap vinyl fence with something more in keeping with the house's character, and brought back some of the furniture that he had gotten rid of. Every change I made felt like I was erasing his presence and reclaiming the space for our family. The experience taught me valuable lessons about trust, family loyalty, and the importance of being careful about who we let into our lives. My mother had been wise to be cautious about fully trusting someone who had such a troubled history with money and relationships. Her decision to structure her the way she did had protected not just the house, but also the financial security that she had worked so hard to build over the years. Today, I'm grateful that my mother had the foresight to see through my stepfather's act and take steps to protect what was important to our family. The house remains in our family where it belongs, and I've been able to create new memories there while honoring the old ones. My stepfather has disappeared from my life completely, and I'm better off for it. The whole experience was painful and stressful, but it ultimately revealed the truth about people's characters and motivations in a way that I'll never forget.